And welcome back from the musical interlude. Of course, it's Hello Africa on Clearview Television. And then before we went on that musical, I told you we have someone of a very, very, very high status in the house, and he's ready to answer all our questions regarding building collapse. And you're welcome, sir. He's Engineer Jokosenumi. Program, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. And like we know, we'll be talking like the government's effort at all levels, federal, state, and even the local government areas. The government and the local government areas who've been having issues of building collapse here and there, and we don't even really know what is the way forward. It's in connection with that we have with us in the studio engineer Jokosenumi to answer some of our questions, and in the course of the program we'll be opening our phone lines where you can call in, ask all his questions. He is the chairman of yes, building Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers, and then he is the chairman, not just a member. He is also the chairman of the panel. And then, of course, so you are not confused. You know you have the right person to answer all your question. All right, sir. You are a member of this panel.
Yes.
So let's just start from there. How are the members? How are they chosen?
Fantastic question. Well, good morning, viewers, and it's a privilege to be here. The panel is a ministerial panel that was constituted by the FCT minister in 2018 to unravel the immediate and remote causes for the collapse of the building that fell off in Jabi district of the city about 17th of August in 2018. Unfortunately, that collapse, as usual, claimed some lives, and government felt terribly concerned, and that committee was put in place. That committee comprised of representatives of regulatory institutions in the built environment. So I had a privilege to represent the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, CORE. So I was the engineer on the panel, even though the chairman of the panel, Professor Matawa, who also was the Director General of NIBRI, is also an engineer like me. But I represented CORE on that panel. There are other representatives that represented other institutions.
All right, so like choosing other members of the panel, is it based on favoritism, ethnicity, or man no man? Like that's
No, not at all. There must be, you must have the requisite experience, the qualification, the experience, the exposure, the knowledge about what they are talking about before you can be called upon to represent them. Korean chose me because I am a structural engineer. Also because I am the chair of the Institution of Structural Engineers, the division of NSC in Abuja here. So I am extremely relevant to the main subject. That was why I was called upon. Many of the other people that participated were chosen on that ground as well.
all right. So going by your answer, do we have enough of you gentlemen, or like do we have enough of you, or just a few hints of?
In the country, you mean?
Yes, in the
Whether
country.
the country has enough structural engineers?
Yes,
Not at all. Not at all.
and not just
It-
in the country,
No, no,
even
no.
in the panel.
No. Well, in the panel, we don't need to have too many people.
Okay.
I am the only structural engineer, apart from the chairman,
Okay.
who is the head of the panel, who is a professor of civil engineering in his own right, who is a director general of NIBRI, but I am the structural engineer on that panel.
All right.
But if your question is about whether we have
In the
enough structural
country,
engineers
also in the country.
the answer is no, we don't.
Okay.
Indeed, it is one of the reasons why we are, if you like, deficient in producing competent structures for the country. Because you can imagine a country with a population nearer 200 million than 190 having less than 1,000 Less than 1,000 structural engineers in the whole country. Even if we are going to spread ourselves thin, there are 774 local governments in this country. There are 36 independent states and the federal capital. When you add this 37 plus that, you will be getting 800 and probably 15 or something.
Wow.
So even if we post one structural engineer per location, which is not possible, the work can still not be done. So in terms of adequacy of qualified structural engineers for Nigeria, we are very far behind.
Whoa. And then is the panel, or is there anything being done to solve this problem, to maybe get more structural engineers, to get people trained and to do the work and all of that?
Absolutely. The whole idea, we have a difficulty. I know that at the time I was in school, when I was growing up, there are competition about science against arts. Government rolled out a lot of programs saying that those in sciences will be encouraged, and so more people can go into it. If you don't catch them young, early, from the science level and take them into engineering, or obviously you can't have these professionals that we're talking about. It is not cheap to train them, and it is not equally a cheap area. Indeed, without prejudice and with all due respect to other aspects of engineering, structural engineering is one of the toughest areas in engineering studies, because it involves a lot of things. So you don't have too many people taking to that option. People want it where they can easily make a way for themselves. If you are going to be a structural engineer, you must be up and doing. You must be steadfast. You must understand what you are doing. You must, of course, like calculations, and you must be able to work with your gadgets all the time.
All right, and then if you look around very well, you see that there are so many young Nigerians who are, they have a lot of potentials. There are some, you see them from the little age, you see them with drawings and a lot doing stuff that this person have this talent, and this person can maybe grow up to be a very good structural engineer. But then maybe they don't have the capacity, they don't have maybe the fund and all of that. Is there anything like maybe scholarship or anything that is being put in place to help Nigerian children who have interest in structural engineering?
Well, I'm sure government is doing a lot around STEM, science and technology, and engineering and mathematics programs. I'm sure if that program is given the right communication. One of our major problems in this country is that, we have good ideas on what to do. Our problem is usually around implementation. So maybe there is no adequate communication to people, to parents, to students, and then encouragement, motivation that will bring people into this type of program. Let me try to address what you are talking about. Structural engineering is not about drawing.
Yeah,
Maybe you are likening it
like
to architecture or fine art. No, they are not. It's extensively more of calculations.
Okay.
We determine the safety of structures. That is what the structural engineer does. Is the one that will guarantee the safety of a structure, and it's not limited to buildings. We do buildings, we do bridges, we do canals, we do airfields, we do dams, we support special structures, towers, and so on and so forth. So we do a lot of things. Anything, as a matter of fact, that needed to be guaranteed for stability must be guaranteed by the structural engineer.
All right, your answer is taking me to my next question.
Yes.
If as a person I want to maybe lay a structure or something, where do I begin? What's the first step? What should I do?
No, your journey will begin from the secondary school. You must be in science. You must like physics. You must be good in mathematics.
No, what I'm saying is that what should be my first step if I want to lay a structure?
If you want to lay a structure, build.
Yeah.
Oh, now listen.
What should be my first step?
I don't. Okay, that's fine. Why do maybe I will moderate your questions
Okay.
and say I will approach it from why our buildings, why our structures fail. Because we don't do the right thing.
Okay.
I will simplify it. A building is a product. A product goes through a production channel. Every product that doesn't go through a certified production channel can never turn out to be a good product. So we have something we call a value chain. You must be familiar with that word. Value chain is like defined process stages for bringing out a product. Every product has a value chain.
Yes.
A building also has a value chain.
Okay.
The problem is that people, including government, as a matter of fact, all the stakeholders, we contribute to the failure of buildings. All of us, we all contribute. The structural engineers have their own problem as well. I've talked about inadequacy, for example. Because they are not enough, they might not be able to supervise all the buildings adequately. But let me take you into the value chain. The value chain, the starting point is usually when you want to build. You decide you want to build. In this country, you acquire your land. You acquire your land in your place of choice. Your land could be a good land and it could be a challenging one. A good land is one that has relatively firm soil in it, where the natural foundation, the ground, is relatively firm.
Okay.
The fairly challenging one can be loose soil, can be soil made up from liable to subsidence, can be soil that is waterlogged. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So they require different treatment. So the starting point is what type of soil
Okay.
do you want to build on? You must understand it so that you will choose the right foundation
Okay.
for the soil. So the journey to failure of building begin from there. So if you have a bad soil, a bad site with a loose soil, soil made up of subsidence or soil that is waterlogged, you must have an appropriate foundation that will support your building on it. Now, we have different types of this foundation. If you use a foundation that is meant for firm soil in a waterlogged environment, you have begun to cause the collapse of your building for yourself. Now, when we design the foundation, who does that? The structural engineers does that. The elementary physics taught us that there is a principle they call the Archimedes principle in physics. It is a principle that talks about what happened when you drop a mass inside a container containing water. You know, if you put a glass of water on the table and you drop a stone or something in it, it will displace an amount of water. The water level will increase, isn't it? That increase in the water level is equal to the weight of the material that you have dropped in it. So Archimedes is saying that in a waterlogged environment, we took it into structural engineering. If I want to put a structure, even in a waterlogged environment, I can put a multi-story building and it will not fall. Why? Because I can determine the entire weight of that building and I will bring it to my site and I will excavate an amount of soil that is equal to the weight of that soil. So by the time I'm replacing my building, it's like nothing has happened. It's just take and replace. But if you don't understand it, you're going to run into troubles. So we have different types of foundation that we use for buildings. The common one is called the strip.
Okay.
The strip is used for small dwelling houses.
Okay.
Small dwelling houses,
The
small
strip.
houses, strip. Then we have the pad. The
Okay.
pad is used for framed structures, for tall buildings. A building is considered tall when it has three or more suspended floors
Okay.
over the ground floor.
Wow.
You know, Americans describe the tall buildings differently from the English.
Okay.
We are in the English environment.
Yes.
So when you see a three-story building, what it means is a four floors, because the ground floor is usually for us just a ground floor. So we count the number of the suspended floors. So anything more than three suspended floors is a tall building. But unfortunately, most of the buildings that are falling in Nigeria, they are barely qualified to be grouped as a tall building. So you deal with the foundation, then you do the full design, develop it, and then of course you choose the right builder that will interpret the drawing made by the structural engineer.
All right, sir. I will ask this question before we go. We'll take a break, and then maybe we'll open our phone lines for people to
That's right.
call in.
That's right.
You know, like a lot of persons know there are laid down rules and regulations regarding, you know, laying structures for building and all of that, but they tend to ignore those laid down rules
Yes.
and regulations.
Yes.
Is there any attendant punishment for those offenders?
Absolutely, this is where the government comes in. The government has the authority, the government has the will. But what we see most of the time is the poor commitment on the part of government to do the right thing. As a matter of fact, we know who are responsible. But tell me, in Nigeria today, we have lost between 1971 and today, we have lost close to 2,000 lives.
Wow.
In different collapse sites across Nigeria. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has done anything about it. The truth is that, you see, we rule our life by politics. So if I do it and then I bring you out as a culprit, and then the next time is that I will receive a phone call from somebody who will say that you are her niece, and then you should not be punished. Indeed, it can even be taken to another ridiculous level. They can say that I am doing it because you are a Muslim, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, you are a Christian. All sorts of nonsense. Until when we address all of those issues, compliance to regulation is a major issue. And who can do it? It is only left for government.
All right, and you've been listening to structural engineer and the chairman of the structural building Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineer
in the FCT.
Yes, in the person of Jokosenumi Oluwatoyin, and of course he's been talking to us about that. At this point, we'll be going on a musical interlude, and when we come back, our phone lines will be open where you can call. Ask your own question. I've been asking him questions and he has been answering my questions. So you can call in and then ask your questions. Tell us how it is with you. What do you think about, you know, the Nigerian system and everything happening around the building collapse here and there. So for now, we'll be going on a musical interlude, so stay with us. And welcome back from the musical interlude. And of course, it's Hello Africa. And with me still in the studio is Engineer Jokosenumi Oluwatoyin. And then, of course, he's the chairman of Nigerian Institute of Structural Engineer. Sir, thank you for staying with us still.
Thank you.
All right. Like I told you earlier, that our phone lines will be open, and now I've fulfilled my promise. The phone lines are open, so you can call in and ask him your questions. All right, sir. Before we went on that break, I was asking if there are any attendant a punishment for offenders, and then you cited some instances. Of course, there are punishments, if I understood you very well, but then because of the system and all of that, so and then you as a person, as an engineer, as a structural engineer, do you have any, like, can you recommend any punishment
Yes, for our members. If our members err, if the fault is that of the structural engineer, of course we have a disciplinary process within the institution, and that can be enforced on our members. But if it involves any other stakeholder, we have to follow the rule of law.
like
So,
what kind of punishment can you recommend?
I mean, like the panel, which I participated, the ministerial panel. We found out that the developer was at fault, and we recommended that the plot should be revoked. The plot should be revoked, and those that lost their lives should be compensated, and such compensation should come from him. So he will pay for all the damages done to those buildings, and ensure that the families of those that lost their lives were fully compensated. So those are the kind of things that we can do. We can't do too much because the court of law is there. But I'm sure in the near future, maybe when we have things like ADR, alternative dispute resolution process in Nigeria, we can be able to even do more. But in terms of managing, disciplining our own members, we have a process for doing that.
All right, and then bringing us closer even to the, building. We have this building collapsed here and there.
Yes.
Nansa, can rescue efforts ever be 100% successful? That is, that there will be no soul left under the rubble.
Well, that is not structural engineering. But if you're asking me what we need to do, whether there is a need for us to improve our rescue process, of course my answer will be yes. When buildings are going to collapse, they collapse in different ways depending on what is going on. Sometimes the last one that I inspected, I saw that the columns were being tampered with. So because the columns were being tampered with, the structure actually fell on its own weight. So you can only imagine if there are human beings under such a structure. Of course, they will be crushed. Now, when it comes to rescue operation, that is use of equipment to move away the rubbles. There are so many other ways which you can use. I have not seen our security people using the special dogs like they use in the United Kingdom, to be able to find out where human beings are lying, and then determining how those things will be carefully removed, because we are talking of concrete and steel reinforcement, so people can easily sustain injury if they are not careful. So it is possible. It is possible to remove everybody, and there is also the possibility to have some difficulty depending on how the building collapsed. Yeah.
All right, and then are governments always mindful of maybe alternative accommodation when demolishing houses, like the case we have in Lagos at the moment?
Well, that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. But if you ask me, to be honest with you, we sympathize with particularly the children, and it really shows our country, for what we are, how we hold our future generation. It is very sad and unacceptable for any country to allow children to be killed the way those children were killed. But it has happened. I believe some lessons must be learned from it. But guess what? All the faults are not governments. Most of the faults are people like me and you, other stakeholders, particularly owners of those structures. Most of them are unnecessarily difficult. They are extremely recalcitrant. They don't obey instructions. I am aware. Everybody heard it. that Lagos State government had listed those buildings for demolition for the past 3 years. It was not yesterday. They went to court, they were stopping them, and you were living under unsafe structure. The one that is painful to me is for Lagos State government to approve that building, despite its condition, to run a primary school where we keep our children, not only in that dangerous situation, but to keep them on the topmost floor. It shows somebody is not doing their work. Indeed, I will expect Lagos State government to look into that, and whoever gives an approval for that school to be sited there and doesn't allow us to evacuate those children on time should be punished. If we start doing that, maybe people will sit up. Then when it comes to providing accommodation, that is why I bring it like that from that perspective to you. Yes, government has a responsibility to provide welfare, to provide security and safety for her citizens. But citizens too has a responsibility, for crying out loud. Who is government? Is it not me and you? If we are not doing the right thing, if we are not supporting government, what do we want them to do? Most of them are begging for our votes, so they don't want to offend us. I'm sure they cannot do that under military arrangement, because that building will have been removed long time ago. Those are the kind of merits that we see in militocracy, and those are the kind of challenges that democracy will continue to face for a long time to come.
Exactly. All right, thank you very much, sir. And then to come back to your group, the structural engineers.
Yes.
Are you getting the much cooperation you needed from the government?
No, not at all. Not at all. We are not. Let me tell you, beginning from how do we process building plans. Whenever you are going to develop a structure, you must produce your drawings. Those drawings should be produced by the proper and fit professionals. Who are those? Architects, structural engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, quantity surveyors. These people, they are very critical to producing a proper and fit drawing. What we have most of the time in all the states of the Federation is that this process is left in the town planning office, as it were, in the state, or development control, or whatever it is. And most of these offices have extreme skill gaps. They don't have the right people to do the work for them. Indeed, what we saw during that investigation shocked me beyond imagination. That most of the buildings that we are preparing for Nigerians are actually being produced or managed by people that they are not qualified, they don't have the right experience. Some of them didn't even go to school. Some of them didn't even have anything like a license to be able to do the work that they are doing. So government, for me, government is not serious enough. We should be able to do something better than that. Now, every building that they fall, one, because of structural failure. They fall because of poor materials. They fall because of poor workmanship. They fall because of poor designs. They fall because of poor construction methods. They fall because of lack of involvement of the right people using quacks. They fall because there is inadequate supervision, monitoring, and control, and several others reasons. So all these issues, government are not helping us. Government is paying lip service to issues of appropriate structural engineering service in our state. And until when that is done, we're just wasting our time. Our buildings will continue to fall, and Nigeria's integrity will be called to question all the time.
All right, sir. And then judging by your by your answer. You
Yeah.
talked about quacks. There
Yeah.
are quacks in every profession. Even in
Absolutely.
our own journalism, you have quacks every
Yeah.
where.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with quacks in the field of structural
Believe you
engineering?
me, I won't come here to tell you that we are making any progress. We are not making any progress at all. The reason is, I can't, even if I know a quack, I can't arrest him or her, isn't it? Even if I know a quack. Nigeria is a society where we give a lot of things to sentiment. Somebody will appear somewhere there and say, he has been doing the work for 20 years. Although he doesn't have the qualification or he doesn't have the license, but he has the experience. Which experience do you have? The experience that you cannot back up with principles. The experience that you cannot prove to me why certain decisions are taken. The experience that is not recognized anywhere. So we have problems. We know them. We know the quacks. Everybody in Nigeria today had fallen foul of the development laws in Nigeria. Every one of us. You will see a permanent secretary will retire, and the next thing they want to be is to be a builder. And then they go to their land and start building for themselves. I have seen a former governor building for himself. He's not an engineer. He doesn't know anything about it. I've seen an accountant. I've seen lawyers. I've seen medical doctors. So when we talk about quacks, it's not limited to those that did not go to school. We are talking about everybody that were not fully prepared, that did not go through a structured educational program, that is not qualified as an engineer, that is not registered, that is not licensed, that doesn't have the authority to do that work. They are quacks. And majority of the people working in our construction industry, including production of buildings, are quacks in Nigeria.
All right, sir. And then still on the Lagos building collapse and even that of Ibadan. And then we're talking about the demolition process right now. You see that even houses are collapsing, even in the process of the demolition. And then I keep wondering if there are no standard methodology, in demolitions in Nigeria.
There are standard methodology. There are standard methodology. Is the same thing. People don't know about it. Okay, where government is involved, they don't have the right equipment. Even government themselves, they don't have the right skilled people that will do it. Some of them have the knowledge, but tools and equipment to do the work is not available. So they have to employ the crudest, if there is anything like that, methodology to bring down the building. If you are trying to ask me how buildings are brought down, there are several methodology on how buildings are brought down. In fact, there are modern ways of even doing it. The components of buildings can actually be dissolved. It's like putting an acid on a piece of paper or on a wooden you know the way it will dissolve. That is how buildings dissolve. That is how buildings are collapsed in developed countries. You saw what happened during the collapse of the twin towers in the United States. Okay, those buildings were removed. Those are some of the tallest buildings in the world. Nothing happened to their neighbors. They were removed because that is a society where they know what they are doing and there are equipment and the laws are there and the right people are engaged to do the job. It's not the one we do here is our party man. So they must get something to do. They give them the jobs that they know next to nothing about, and we want good result. It's not going to happen. That is why we find ourselves in the way we found ourselves. There are solutions, there are methodologies for collapsing buildings without creating havoc to their neighbors.
All right, sir. And then that brings me to my next question.
Yes.
Like, can these people who are responsible for demolition be sued or maybe forced to obey the methods, the laid down methods for demolition?
Absolutely, they can. You see, but what you will find is that most of the buildings that are falling on each other, have not even been rightly situated. Did you understand what I mean? They have not been rightly situated. There are rules in this country about how buildings should stand. We have a building line. We have distances that must be maintained between buildings. If the ones you are seeing on the television, it's clear that those rules have been fouled. Those rules were never respected. So if anything happened to their building, yes, they have a right to go to court. They will meet government there. And if government knows their onions, if the representatives of government know their onions, I can assure you most of them will go to court and come out without a penny because they have not cited their buildings within the right regulations. So that's what happens most of the time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Brilliant answers. Well, before we call this session a wrap, what word of advice can you give to Nigerians towards stemming the tide of building collapse?
Fantastic. We have no choice. Let me start like this. Nigeria is a colony of Britain, or was a colony of Britain. We must emulate good countries like the United Kingdom. The last time, the last time a building fell in the United Kingdom is about 1902 by record. 1902, 117 years ago. That is what we should be doing. That is what we should be aiming at. That is the kind of target that we should be working for.
Hello. Hello, welcome to Clearview TV studio. It's Hello Africa. Please tell us your name.
Okay, so there are stakeholders in the building industry, in the arrangement. Stakeholders are people or organizations that are affected directly or indirectly by a process. That's a stakeholder. There are different stakeholders: owners of building, developers of building, professionals in the industry, users. Do you understand? And so many other people. All of them are involved. We all have a role, and government. We all have roles to play. Everyone must understand their role and play them properly. Beginning with government. Government needed to do more empowerment. And the empowerment must start from encouragement, catching them young, putting more money into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs so that we can produce more engineers and fortunately or considerably maybe we can produce more structural engineers for Nigeria. We need to do that. We need to have the laws. We need to have the laws, the relevant laws that will allow these professionals to do their work without infringement. Government must allow professionals to do their work, and there must be commitment. And that commitment must be standard, must be regular, must be consistent, must not have any cloud of politicking around it. Government must stand up and say, this is what it is. Let us develop our institutions, not the people. Let us develop our institutions so that they can act well, they can deliver quality service for the country. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the owners too, you need to be educated. You need to know the kind of building you want to build. You need to understand the site, the nature of your site, the soil that is prevailing there, the kind of foundation that you need to have, how much it will cost you. You cannot just afford to build just anything with a view to kill people in the future. If such happen, such owners, such developers should be dragged into the court and probably jailed for doing that.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Jokosenumi Oluwatoyin, for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and then for now we'll be going on a musical interlude, and when we return, we'll come back with Africa in Focus. So stay with us.
Okay.